Well, I've been a print journalist, mostly a print journalist for more than a decade now. And the aim of Repúblika magazine was it wasn't to replace the media that's currently operating in Fiji, but it was to provide an alternative voice, alternative viewpoints, and fresh ideas that other mainstream media either don't want to touch or don't think it's worth it.
And why did you choose to publish Professor Wadan Narsey's speech on Repúblika magazine?
Well, I was invited to that event as to help judge one of the events on to mark World Press Freedom Day, and I was curious about something that had been going on, but no one wanted to speak about what was. You could tell that there was something going on under the surface, but no one wanted to go on the record to speak about it. And then it was discovered. Wadan Narsey then emailed to say, that he was invited and then disinvited. And then it was my attempts to get, a comment on the record from the university. The vice chancellor directed me to the school the school responsible. The head of school wouldn't reply to my questions. Neither would the journalism school. Neither would the journalism association's president. So I just thought that it's the height of irony that on a day to mark World Press Freedom, even if there wasn't anything sinister, it was quite significant that he was disinvited, and I thought that they should have at least had the courtesy to respond to questions and gone on the record. So it was when I decided that it would only be prudent to publish his speech in full.
So what are the reasons, do you think, for them not speaking to you?
I cannot figure out for the life of me. Maybe they were really busy. Maybe they didn't see my email. But I can't figure out how, because I had followed up several times as well. Maybe they just didn't want to draw any more attention to the fact that they had been involved in, what many would call censorship of academic freedom or freedom of speech. Although I must point out that Professor Mishra did respond to me, and he's the head of language at the School of Language. He did reply to me, and he pointed out that there wasn't anything, he didn't have anything to do with academic freedom, but then he wouldn't explain as well what the issues were. But it is well known that Professor Wadan Narsey is an outspoken academic on developments in Fiji, and also that USP are always wary of him since he's left because of his forthright views.
One of Narsey's main points is that the ownership of the Fijian media influences the content of the news media. In your opinion, to what extent is that true?
Well, I think that carries a lot of merit to that assertion, because that's one of the reasons why I started my own publication. Even though it's small, I have only one staff, and we rely heavily on freelancers and contributors. I think the ownership of media in this country plays a big role in how the media does its work. Because if you look around, you see that the Fiji Times is owned by mainly a department store chain. The same thing with the Fiji Sun, owned by corporate interests. There are other shareholders who also have a significant business interest in other fields apart from the media. So there's Fiji Television as well involved. And you have CFL, who's Punjas has a big stake in CFL. So, yeah, you can see that the non-media people own huge stakes in Fiji's media businesses, and it has an effect on the way that journalists operate, whether we like it or not. That's the way it pans out. So that is why I started my own, because I have the media background. I don't come from a, big corporate background. I don't have big financial backing, so it's just from my sweat and tears and passion that I'm doing this.
So what stories are being left out of the Fiji media?
Well, there's a range of stories. If you follow the blogs, most of the stories that get reported there, whether they're verified or not, they don't usually make it into our mainstream media. Sometimes they do, a few weeks, few months down the line, and sometimes when it does appear, it's only as a brief, it's only as an aside in another story, which is why, as as an independent alternative publisher, what I do is I verify some of the better stories, say from blogs, from Facebook. Facebook carries a lot of people post up a lot of things on Facebook now. So if I'm able to verify some of those stories, then we mention something about it on our Facebook page as well, and we publish something in our pages. So it'll be things to do with crimes, or if the police say that they cannot comment, or if the police say that it's a non-issue, then it doesn't get printed at all. It doesn't get published at all. The other problem too is the media decree, which makes it virtually mandatory to get a reply from or get a comment from a person related to the story. It many times, if opposite party refuses to reply or says won't reply, then it's virtually impossible to get a balanced story, because that's one of the requirements of the media decree, is to have a fair and balanced story. So what do you do if an official source refuses to say anything about it, or refuses to even acknowledge your question? So you are left with virtually no choice but not to publish anything like that. So that's some of the challenges that Fiji media faces at the moment.
Another point Narsey made in his comments was that there are financial incentives to be pro-regime in Fiji at the moment. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think I tend to agree with that. Few advertisers have immediately just said, "Oh no, you're too political," or that the things we do are, a bit left field or a bit on the wild side. So they tend to be wary or steer clear of us. So I think that has some merit to. There is a merit to what Professor Wadan Narsey says about the financial incentives.
I've also spoken with Peter Lomas at the Fiji Sun, or he's given me some written answers at least, and he criticizes Wadan Narsey's credentials, saying he is a disgruntled ex-USP academic with a large chip on his shoulder. How reliable are the comments made by Narsey?
Well, Professor Wadan Narsey is actually a very well-respected academic. I mean, yeah, it's Peter Lomas's view that he is a disgruntled academic, and that is his view. But I mean, if he listens carefully to what Professor Wadan Narsey is saying, and he's said this from over the years, he's been consistently saying the things he's been saying. So, and a lot of his work is based on his his extensive academic experience, and he has done a lot of groundbreaking work, even with the Fiji Bureau of Statistics, looking into poverty figures. And so his work is quite reliable, I would tend to think.
Lomas also characterizes the media freedom in Fiji as free and fair. How would you characterize the media freedom in Fiji?
Well, I suppose freedom and fairness is in the eye of the beholder. That's all I'll say.
All right. What can realistically be done in the current political situation in Fiji to improve the standard of the media?
Well, I think because the problem at the moment is that most of the current crop of journalists have never functioned in an environment that was, pre-2006 environment. A lot of the journalists that were around in 2006 have either moved on to other corporate jobs, communications jobs, or left the country, gone into management. And so the rest, actually, the journalists on the ground, the ones at the front line are a younger lot, and a lot that haven't been exposed much to, to the fact that that it is a journalist's job to ask questions, and it is a journalist's job to challenge, and we shouldn't be intimidated or afraid. But the sad reality is that, in Fiji today, because of past experiences, a lot of journalists just go through the motions, do a he said, she said story, and that was it. And they don't dig deeper, apart from the lifestyle and the softer stories. There is hardly any political analysis, political analytical stories. Although I must point out that in the past few weeks, the Fiji Sun has started a elections coverage. So they've been doing quite a few good interviews with political figures, old political figures, new political figures. So that has been an interesting concept coming from the Fiji Sun, because some of the things that have been published, you wouldn't have expected Fiji Sun to publish, stories in which the subject is calling for peaceful protest, mass peaceful protest. So, I think if you look carefully, there are some instances of the media opening up, testing the boundaries, and it's happening. So, despite what I said earlier, there are some instances where interesting bits of reporting are coming up, but you really have to pay attention to see it.
But do you think there is something that can be done to improve the media in Fiji and in a short-term perspective?
Well, I think the first thing that we've been trying to do, and the first thing that should be done, and which we as journalists have been trying to do for many, many years now, is to organize ourselves, get our act together as journalists. I'm not sure where the registration of our association is at the moment, but that was supposed to have happened. So I think the first thing we need to do is to, organize ourselves, and we need to realize that an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. The problem right now is that a lot of media are fractured. Some journalists don't talk to other journalists, and some journalists tend to write less than flattering things about other journalists in their gossip columns. So this goes on and on, so the media remains fractured, and, it's true that united we stand, divided we fall. And I think in the case of Fiji, that's the problem right now, is divided we fall. So that's the first thing we need to do, is get our act together and organize ourselves. And we can see where the problems are, where we need particular training, where we need more support. And I think that way, when other journalists realize that, you can do your work without fear or favor, and the more journalists realize that, the more it'll become natural to them. What I'm wanting to say is that, yes, a lot of time the analysis of the media, when the local media here look at it, they think, oh, look, here we go again. It's a lot of it's simplistic analysis, and it's not that straightforward. It's not that, black and white. And, and because this being Fiji, despite our ideological differences, say, for example, in the Fiji Sun, it doesn't mean I don't talk to journalists from the Fiji Sun, We do. We talk, we chat. And that's why I say Dr. Narsey's analysis is true to some extent. The journalists on the ground have very little influence after they've done a story, And there are numerous examples of that. We still have a good relationship with them, but it's just ideological differences at the management level, that's another story.
Is there anything you didn't agree with Professor Narsey on?
Well, I think to some extent, journalists themselves too know what they are doing, and they will self-censor themselves. I think it's not completely, it may not be completely true to blame everything on the corporate owners, because I think individual journalists themselves know and take a conscious decision to censor themselves sometimes. So that's about the only point I think needs to be clarified.